Okay, bootcamp. So having done the math eco topics, then we move on to econometrics, and then the prescribed textbook is Woodridge. And then for the bootcamp, we would cover the six easiest chapters. Okay, and then again, just like the math eco, I really rely on you to make a serious effort to read through the prescribed chapters. You must read the prescribed chapters at least once, and then go through the PowerPoint slides, then the lecture speech notes, okay, and then the YouTube videos would come last, okay, summary highlights video. Okay, so I'm going to rather start off with chapter 19. It rather has some relevance to your research module, Eco 701. Okay, so this is the overall summary of the chapter. It is about the main steps involved to carry out an econometric project, and obviously econometrics is involved in case your topic involves empirical data analysis. Okay, you are going to learn more of these concepts in Eco 701. Okay, pose a research question, literature review. Just to give you an idea, your literature review, which is the chapter 2 of your research essay, should consist of 3 key areas or 3 sessions. Defining key concepts, review of the core theories, and review of the past empirical studies to identify the research gap that your proposed study aims to fill. Data collection, primary or secondary data. At honors level, I don't expect you to collect primary data. It's too much for honors students. So primary data means you conduct some field trip, you interview people to collect data. So at honors level, you are rather expected to use secondary data. Secondary data means data which has been captured by someone else and released by that person or institution, such as the Statistics, South Africa Census data, the SARB Reserve Bank Quarterly Bulletin, time series data, or even World Bank, IMF international data, country level data. And then you move on to conduct econometric analysis. Okay, assuming your topic involves empirical data analysis. And then for the Woodridge book, in the first few chapters we are going to cover, there is one strong message emphasized strongly on and off by Woodridge, which is we need to ensure that the error terms in the PRF, population regression function, or we can call residuals in SRF, sample regression function. But going back to PRF, we have to ensure that the error terms are uncorrelated with the explanatory variables. Okay, I repeat, we need to ensure that the error terms are not correlated with the explanatory variables. In case you really find correlation between error terms and the explanatory variables, you most likely commit underfitting, meaning you most likely exclude some relevant explanatory variables. Okay, but more on that later. And then you have to move on to write a research paper, and then the different chapters: intro, the theories, literature review chapter, econometric models, methods, and the data chapter. Usually the data and methods are discussed in one chapter, chapter 3. And then later, actually next chapter, chapter 1, I will talk about time series data, cross-sectional data, and panel data. And then you have to present the results and interpret the results. Later, I'm going to talk about statistical significance, which you already learned from your second and third year econometrics. Remember those hypothesis tests, t-tests, and so forth. Economic significance, okay, we haven't discussed at undergraduate level. So later, at the end of this video, I will talk about the difference between statistical significance and economic significance. Okay, then for the PowerPoint slides, okay. Slide 3 talk about that your research project should convey something new. Okay, otherwise your research will be boring, isn't it? So on the study guide, I use this as an example of research question: the impact of social media usage on economics 1 performance. Nowadays, we can't deny that social media does, as long as you use it in the right way, it does have an impact on positive impact on academic performance. Maybe the tutors form a WhatsApp group for each tutorial group, or maybe I open my YouTube learning channel. Okay. And then using this social media usage study, maybe we can prove that our research or this research would really provide us something new. Okay, maybe in my econometric model, I will add a new explanatory variable such as this one, WhatsApp usage time for academic purpose, obviously. as an additional explanatory variable. We know the usual boring, not boring, typical explanatory variables will be study hours, lecture attendance to explain academic performance. But shouldn't we now we are in the 21st century, 4IR, fourth industrial revolution, shouldn't we now include an explanatory variable in connection with social media usage, such as this WhatsApp usage time, okay? Then we can rerun the regression to see if WhatsApp group would really have a positive and significant impact on students' performance. And then I can also study an existing question for more recent data. So perhaps let's say in country X, the impact of social media usage on academic performance was last studied long time ago, more than 10 years ago in country X. So now it is about time to conduct an updated study using the most recent data. Okay, or maybe I can study a question from a different country. Actually, overseas, especially in the USA, there are already quite a lot of studies, empirical studies, that examine the impact of social media usage on students' performance, but hardly in South Africa. So isn't it time for a South African study to come up in the literature? Okay, or I can try new methods to study an old question, such as using a different functional form. IV regression you should learn towards the end of Eco 730. It is called instrumental variable regression, if I remember correctly, or two-stage least square. Find a completely new questions. Maybe you want to use panel data to keep track of the impact of usage of social media on a certain group of students' performance over a period of time, maybe from economics level 1 all the way to level 3. So panel data, I'm going to explain in greater detail in the next chapter, but just to give chapter 1 actually, but just to give you an idea that panel data means you interview the same group of people more than once over a period of time. Okay. Policy relevant, maybe from your research study, after adding the WhatsApp explanatory variable with the results, maybe in the policy session, I can suggest something. Oh, should the government offer WhatsApp data subsidy for academic purpose? Just like the suggestions on making eComfort zero rated in terms of downloading materials from eComfort. Should it be zero rated? Okay, as long as we use it for academic purpose. Okay. And then slide number 9, I think it is 5 to 8, okay, talks about the data, and then I think you already learned a lot about data, entering and storing data from Excel and eViews. As I mentioned before, the different types of data will be discussed in chapter 1. And then just to remind you, in case you totally forgot the dummy variable chapter, categorical variable. Remember that? You have to create dummy variables. In other words, you can only include male or female dummy as an explanatory variable in the regression. But you can't just include the gender variable because gender is a categorical variable. 1 equals male, 2 means female. You cannot include the categorical variable, but you have to generate dummy variables for each category and then add the dummy variables as explanatory variables. And then expect when you really work on your Eco 701 essay, you have to present some summary statistics table. This is typical, okay, in the research essay, showing some very basic stats like mean, median, minimum, maximum, variance, standard deviation. Okay, and then on slides 10 to 15, couple of slides on running the econometric analysis. I want to focus on stepwise regression, meaning you run different regressions with different combinations of explanatory variables and then show the regressions in tabular format. It is not that anything sinful or wrong. Actually, it is the correct approach. In fact, expect that you should run at least 2 regressions, and then in the regression table, you have different columns. Maybe column A, which only includes x1, x2, and x3, and then column B, regression, which includes x1, x2, x3, x4, x5, and x6. 6 explanatory variables, okay? But you are going to learn more about that actually when you really work on your research essay, okay? And then some tips, the last few slides, slides 16 to 24, you can have a look, okay? Yeah, for example, this is how we show the this is what I just mentioned, yeah. Okay, do you see 3 columns showing the 3 regression results, okay? And then this is what I mean about earlier, what I meant earlier about showing the descriptive statistics. of the data. Do you see these simple statistics, mean, median, or not mean, mean, standard deviation, minimum, and maximum? And then description of the explanatory variables. You can describe in a tabular format, okay? Or you can use, I think I don't need the slides anymore, or you can use paragraphs, written paragraphs, tabular format, I showed you in the previous slide, and then you can use bullet points actually. Okay, more on that when we have the writing workshops in Eco 701. Okay, now this is important. You need to know the difference between the Gujarati style and the Woodridge style. For Gujarati, the textbook you use for 242 and 311, constant B1. And then B2, X2 is the first explanatory variable, B2 is the slope parameter, then the next one is X3, X4, let's say sample size is 10. Your K would be the number of parameters, including the constant for Gujarati. So K is equal to 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, including the constant. Then degrees of freedoms n minus k would be 10 minus 4, which is 6. But for Woodridge, it is a bit different. The constant would become B0 actually instead of B1. I actually think it makes more sense. And then your first slope parameter would be B1, and the first explanatory variable will be X1. Again, I would agree with this style of Woodridge. And then X2, X3. And then in Woodridge, n still stands for the sample size, 10. But k now stands for the number of parameters excluding the constant. This is why k is equal to 3. And then degrees of freedoms would rather be n minus k minus 1. Then you might wonder, where does this 1 come from? It actually means the number of constants, so it is 1. Therefore, the degrees of freedom would be 10 minus 3 minus 1. Then you still get the same degrees of freedom as in the Gujarati style. Okay, happy with that? Then the last topic is the difference between statistical significance and economic significance. Statistical significance, you already know it's a test, hypothesis testing on whether the parameter is 0 or non-zero in the PRF. But economic significance, it's about the parameter, whether it is big enough in absolute terms. So in order to fully understand the difference, can I enlarge it further? Okay, so let's look at this example. Marks explained by study hours, WhatsApp usage, and whether you have a WhatsApp study group, and HH income means household income. Then I give you the standard error of each parameter, and I even work out the computer t-stat for each one. And then looking at the computer t-stats, I think these are the two that are statistically significant. But look at the last computer t-stat, very low, very weak, okay, only 0.814. Then if we conduct the hypothesis testing, I think only B1 and B2 would come through actually. In other words, only study hours and WhatsApp are most likely the only two explanatory variables that will feature in the PRF. Or the PRF would most likely look like that. Expected value of marks is a function of study hours and WhatsApp study hours. In other words, household income is a too-weak, actually we can say irrelevant explanatory variable in the PRF. Because the parameter is from the result of the hypothesis testing is statistically insignificant given this very weak computer t-stat. I think it makes sense if we think about the theory, because I have never heard of any education literature saying household income would have an impact on marks. Yeah, maybe a little bit of a positive relationship, but not particularly strong. We do have kids coming from poorer families, they perform excellently. Okay, so this is what statistical significance is all about. But economic significance is about the parameter. Okay, if you look at this parameter, the first slope parameter 5.25, then in terms of economic significance, it is significant because the magnitude is huge in absolute terms. So B1 would come through in terms of economic significance. Meaning, the reason is because if my study hour increases by 1 unit, there is a ceteris paribus, providing there's no change in other explanatory variables. There's a huge impact on marks, an increase of 5.25. Similarly, I would argue in terms of economic significance, the magnitude, this B3 would also come through because if household income increases by 1 rand, then marks would increase by more than 3 marks, which is quite a huge economic magnitude, although we know that it wouldn't come through in terms of statistically significance. But then finally, for the WhatsApp one, although it is statistically significant, in terms of magnitude, it is too small, so it is insignificant in terms of economic significance. Meaning, if I have a WhatsApp study group, my marks would only increase by 0.1. Isn't it too small in terms of economic magnitude or absolute terms? So this is why I would raise the question. Given this small magnitude or economic insignificance, do you really think the government should consider spending fiscal revenue to implement WhatsApp usage subsidy to boost economics performance if the economic magnitude is so small, only 0.1? So think about it. So that's it for this chapter.